Hello. If you love interactive, exploratory artwork and you haven't heard of TeamLab, I'm sorry. Where have you been? TeamLab is around the world and there are some permanent exhibitions in Japan. Whilst my husband and I were there earlier this year, we visited the TeamLab Kyoto Biovortex and it was amazing. They say usually about an hour, hour and a half, maybe two. I think we were there for over 3. I seem to do this a lot with exhibitions, but hey. My name's Charlotte and welcome to my studio here in Wiltshire. And today I'm going to take you through TeamLab Biovortex. So before I share my experience of TeamLab with you, let me tell a little story of what it's all about. TeamLab, founded in 2001, is an international art collective. Their collaborative practice seeks to navigate the confluence of art, science and technology, as well as the natural world. Through art, the interdisciplinary group of specialists, including artists, programmers, engineers, CG animators, mathematicians, and architects, aims to explore the relationship between the self and the world and new forms of perception. In order to understand the world around them, people separate it into independent entities with perceived boundaries between them. TeamLab seeks to transcend these boundaries in our perception of the world, of the relationship between the self and the world, and the continuity of time. Everything exists in a long, fragile, yet miraculous, borderless continuity. TeamLab works are in permanent exhibitions in the National Gallery of Victoria, Melbourne, Art Gallery of New South Wales, Sydney, Art Gallery of South Australia in Adelaide, the National Gallery of Australia in Canberra, Amos Rex in Helsinki, Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, Asian Art Museum, San Francisco, Eurasian Contemporary Art Collection in Istanbul, Asia Society Museum in New York, as well as Kyoto, Japan. As predominantly a painter and a drawer, I have always wondered how the experience of interactive artwork would be. Now, my husband and I went to a Van Gogh interactive exhibition in London and it was good. However, TeamLab takes it to another level. You've got sensory experiences as well as mind-boggling rooms that feel like you're in a black hole and yet you're just in a weirdly shaped room. You can play in foam pits with foam that's created in the air rather than just foam blocks. And you can mess around climbing on blocks tied to string like children, but you're just a massive adult. When you walk towards this completely unassuming building, and I genuinely mean unassuming, we did go there in the dark, it's the middle of Kyoto, it's not what I expected. So when we walked there, it was, as I say, it was dark. We walked down a side street, we found the entrance and we were like, hey, how do we get in? I thought there were tickets at the door. There were not. We had to panic buy online. We did get in though. We did get in. It's all black when you go into the entryway. So you sort of kind of get ready for that darkened experience that is TeamLab. And then when you are ready, you've dropped your coats and your big bags off, because they're not allowed in. You walk into this hall. Well, you get your little introduction to say, hello, don't trip over anything, it's dark in here, and you are liable for your own safety. Fire exits are pointed out, but you can walk in the curtains. And then all of a sudden you're let out into this fabulous room that's Japan inspired. This room was filled with projections and images of blossoms forming into butterflies that adventured both floor, wall and up into the ceiling lights. And each and every movement you made, you were somehow interacting with this, whether the projections came onto you or whether your actions altered the projections. There were, I think, a few ways in which you could move around the space, so we kind of just went one way and stuck with it. And this pushed us out into a room in which there was growing vines on the wall, and I think some of the space had mirrors, which made it a little bit confusing, if I'm honest. I wasn't quite sure what I was meant to expect from here, so we did move on, and we've explored a couple of other spaces. Some of these spaces were some of the most, I would say, famous images from that I would know of TeamLab and TeamLab Biovortex. And this included I call it the crystal room. I'm not sure officially what it's called. It is on their website though. And this room involved hundreds of LED lights hung in separate formations with a mirrored floor and mirrored walls. And this created such an insane effect because you are completely surrounded by these mirrors. These mirrors just create the sense of the forever and the continuity of the space, which is one of the things that TeamLab wanted to focus on. Admittedly, it was really addictive to be in that space because we also found the little screen that you could touch to change the noises and the lights, and these happened together. They weren't dramatic in terms of it wasn't sudden loud crashing, banging, and then very soft kind of ocean waves. Each of the sounds were encompassing within the room, but they didn't make you feel overwhelmed. So there was rain, lightning, I think fire, and it settled around you along with the lighting as well. And because there were so many LEDs and there was just so much reflection, you were truly surrounded by it all. And when the lights changed, for example, from the lightning to the fire, that change from the bright white to the reds and the oranges really created that stark contrast. Possibly one of the most intriguing rooms to myself was in which there were shiny balls, possibly around this size, so a smallish football. I don't know, I don't play. But around this size that were reflective, and the only thing that was moving them around the room was a constant airflow. And this airflow switched up every minute or so. So it started at one end and created a vortex, and you had to move with the sculpture. So this is a moving interactive sculpture. So it started at one end of the room in a vortex, and then you heard that die down, and then it suddenly appeared all on the floor, spreading out around you, and you could freely move through the space. And then all of a sudden it started moving. I say all of a sudden. You heard the fans starting up, but you weren't quite sure where they would move in the space. And you were suddenly rushed into this formation along the side, because all of a sudden they're coming into 3 formations, one left, one right, and one centre. And then they died down, and then it moved towards the doorway, and you were kind of being affronted by these balls at all times. However, being a physics lover, and someone who loves to move within space, it was really intriguing to watch this happen and think about how it's only fans, it's only air moving to create this. And for myself, I really then thought about like the weather, how it's only air that moves that creates a lot of our weather systems, because it forces water up a mountain to create clouds, and the rain systems that, for example, a lot of England get because of Wales. And there's probably going to be someone to correct me on that, but it's that kind of thing of where the air pushes can change a lot. We also explored the image that was promoted to us for TeamLab, and this was a very, I would say, Japanese-esque room. Being a Westerner, we don't necessarily have lanterns, or we don't celebrate things with lanterns, and this kind of soft lantern light, I think, is very much an Eastern thing. I would personally say it's more Eastern than Western. So when we walked into this room absolutely filled with lanterns at different heights, with the mirrored surface of the floor and walls, it was one of those things that you walk into a space that you can breathe deeply in. There was a soft murmur of the lights through the room, in which they would glow and dim almost in a wave. Some of them would come up, some of them would dim, and this slow movement around the room was very, very calming. It allowed you to have the breath you may not know you needed, especially with some of the spaces, some of the exhibition spaces being very full on, being very tactile as well. This was a great space that you could almost hide in a corner and take in. Some of the spaces we did visit a couple of times because I got lost. My husband is one that does not get lost in spaces like this, but I was letting the artwork guide me. Little did we know there was an upstairs, and this is where the bubbles were that I mentioned. I didn't film this because, yeah, I didn't want those chemicals or that on my oh yeah, no, it was slightly sticky. So yeah, I didn't want that on my phone, basically. However, in one of the final spaces that had several rooms coming off of it, it was almost a garden space, and this space allowed you to meander through. A lot of people were rushing at this point, I did see. I I don't know whether they were more aware of the time than we were, or whether they knew what was coming up next. So walking through this space definitely felt like we were the only ones taking our time. But the projections on the walls were changing through the seasons. The plants were real. I did check them out. I was very impressed because they looked very nice. And the exhibitions off of this space allowed you separate time for thinking and manoeuvring. The last space that we explored was the final space of the evening, and this was the playground, so to speak. This was the most interactive space of them all, and you could walk almost anywhere. There were slides. This is where the climbing area was, and you could also draw your own creature that would then be put up on the wall through a scanning technique. And it was absolutely fantastic to see adults play like kids, and kids play like even bigger kids, because this was the space that you could truly be like, yeah, I can do anything here. What was really nice about being in Japan was that although there were quite a lot of people around, you had kind of your own personal space within that area. But because we were there and we were there at kick-out time, we were some of the last people to explore a couple of the exhibition spaces within this play zone. It meant that we were one of 2 or 3 people within that space, which did make it feel really empty. I'm not sure whether that's a purpose or whether that's just because of the time of the day that we were there, but it did make it a certainly fantastic experience. I know that TeamLab does come here to the UK in London, and I was not fortunate enough to go and visit last time that they were exhibiting in the UK. However, I am really hoping that we get to go to another one soon. One on that list I may be able to go to. Let's see if my husband agrees. However, I have one more gallery to share with you from our Japan adventures, so I hope to see you next time, where I share that one last gallery with you and then start sharing some of the artwork I have been up to in the meantime. Thank you for visiting, and I hope to see you in the next one.